Strong.
What's going on between the dots? Back at it for another week here. Joined as always by my good friends, Mr. Rory Keith and Colin Kajowski. A lot to get into today. We got the NHL All-Star Game recap that we're going to be covering, talking about the skills competition and Auston Matthews winning All-Star Game MVP. We'll talk about the Oilers win streak coming into an end at 16 games. Of course, we'll talk a little bit of Leafs and Sens. DJ Smith was named assistant coach this week. We got a lot of trades to break down as well, including a big one involving Sean Monahan and Elias Lindholm and Andrei Kuzmenko. All those guys getting traded to different teams there. Lots to get into. A lot of fun things we're going to be discussing. How you doing today, Kijo?
Good. I'm feeling a little lighter this week with no stash anymore.
Yeah, you can come on the podcast every week and embrace a new look, which is impressive. How you doing, Rory?
Yeah, very impressive. Doing good. Wings have their bye week, so maybe a little less hockey on than I would normally have, but it's good to have some games back on the background.
Yeah, I feel the same way with my Sens. They haven't really started up yet, but some other action already kind of going on. This past weekend, there obviously was the All-Star Game that happened in the skills competition where Connor McDavid ended up winning that skills competition and Matthews took home the All-Star Game MVP. So what was your guys' overall thoughts on the weekend?
Not the biggest surprise with McDavid taking that home, I guess. He very, very clearly has all that talent, right? And it was cool to hear that he actually helped put together the skills competition too and lay it out in a manner that they could actually put their skills on display more. So it seemed more official, more really based around and trying to drive and showcase the player's skill. So I liked it. I liked it more than years past. And viewership was up quite a lot too.
For me, I think it was watching McDavid, and you mentioned he won and everything. It just shows again that he's in another league. He is just, anything he does on the ice is incredible. He's better than everyone at pretty well all the events. He was just by far the best guy. Matthews won the game MVP, but watching McDavid in the skills was just incredible.
Yeah, he's got to bring home a cup, though. I'll tell you that. And Bum Kucherov, that wasn't even trying this weekend, that was pretty funny to watch, if you ask me. He's just skating around. It's like it's beer league out there. And
that is crazy. That was crazy.
I was booing him from the living room.
Yeah,
he deserved that. He deserved that. And the commentators were even saying how he was embarrassing the league, and his passes just no effort at all. I didn't see the other one where he ended up like waving to the fans, but like just opt out at that point.
Zero bend in his knees during those skills or those skills competitions. So yeah, and Leafs ended up winning though that All-Star Game. Matthews with the All-Star Game MVP. Did you hear what David Pastrnak said afterwards?
I didn't.
You didn't? It was
no.
He ended up saying, it was the Leafs haven't won much, so it was a good thing that they could get a win there.
And everyone hates the Leafs. Doesn't matter where you play. Everyone just hates the Leafs.
Just rent-free in Pasternak's head. Rent-free.
I think it's the complete other way, because I think he ended up saying that because Leafs fans were booing him and Swayman on the ice. So I think that was part of that conversation in the locker room afterwards. And like, if you're a player and the only reason you're getting booed is because you just beat that team all the time, like, the fans aren't like helping themselves at all when that's the case.
Yeah, definitely a top 5 suffering franchise there for sure.
No chance. Get out of here.
All right, so
we can't go back.
They gotta win. They gotta. Yeah. We're not revisiting that just yet. If you haven't checked that out in one of our previous episodes, make sure you go give that a look. But yeah, so obviously some good hockey, some great talent on the ice this past weekend, and some other hockey that started back up, the Oilers, they ended up taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. Chance to extend their win streak, and unfortunately came to an end at 16, and it is now the second longest win streak in the NHL. What was your thoughts on that game, Roy?
Well, I didn't watch it because that's past my bedtime for one, but but the Oilers had twice as many scoring chances. So it seems like they outplayed Vegas, but coming off that long of a stretch, no games, and coming back to play another powerhouse like that, like that's tough. So at least they didn't come out completely sluggish. It seems like they still have their legs about them and stuff. And I don't know, like Draisaitl had a totally empty net. I don't even know what the situation was, but Hill diving across the crease, making the glove save. Definitely a candidate for maybe save of the year there. But yeah, it's too bad. Wouldn't mind seeing them go into Anaheim, potentially breaking a big record like that.
Yeah. And for me, it doesn't matter too much. It all matters is that they figure it out come the end of the year, come playoff time. I love their forward group right now. I still think they need to add somebody to their lineup, though, the Oilers. Like, they have a really strong, obviously, they got McDavid, they got Draisaitl, they got guys like good secondary guys like Nugent Hopkins and Evander Kane, but, like, aside from that, and Zach Hyman, you could throw him in there, too, but aside from that, it's, like, I don't know, I think they could use some more depth up front, and, I mean, credit to them for stringing together that nice win streak and getting themselves back into a playoff conversation there. So now they're sitting in third in the Pacific, which is nicely spotted in the in playoffs, which is great.
Yeah, if I had to go off the top. Sorry, go ahead, Kicho.
It'd be cool to know how far their odds changed. You know how everyone had them to win the cup at the start of the year when they lost all those games. What it changed to? Because now they're up they're the favorite again after 16 wins in a row. I wonder how low it got. Like, what would have been the best time to bet on them? Obviously, when they were losing, but what would the odds have been? That's be interesting little stat to find out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, odds to win after they lost that game to the Sharks.
Yeah. So
yeah,
their win streak comes to an end there at 16 games, and if the playoffs started today, they'd be set to face the Vegas Golden Knights in the first round. So
that'd be a good one.
That would be a great one. So that one comes to an end. Why don't we talk a little bit of Leafs right now? They had their first game back the other night. They lose to the Islanders. What was your thoughts on that game, Kijo?
I mean, it's tough how they almost get a point again, and their regulation wins aren't going up, and now they're just starting to lose the games before you even get to overtime. So you're not getting that point. And of course, a couple things. Pierre Engvall gets the video tribute. I mean, I'm gonna get a video tribute from the Leafs at some point. Like, where does it stop with the video tributes? Like, I just don't get it. But of course, 2 minutes left. Engvall hasn't, I think it was like 18 games he hadn't scored and hadn't had a point in like 11. Of course, he buries the game winner against his former team. And then after the game, you get the classic Sheldon Keefe. Yeah, we didn't play too bad tonight. We just played good enough to lose. Well, sorry, Sheldon, but why don't you fix that? Because I'm sick of hearing it. They're losing to the Stars right now, so I hope they turn that around tonight. But like, I don't know. I'm talking like they're struggling way more than they are because they're in a playoff spot, but they're getting close to all those teams are close in the standings. Like, something's got to change. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'd like another defenseman in here. But I guess we'll see with the trade deadline not too far away now. Something's going to happen, but they got to do something.
Yeah.
What have you thought about Samsonov since he's been back?
He's been making the saves, but he just still looks so sketchy, to be honest. Like, Barzal just fired one from the corner, and he's like standing up with his pads right side by side, and he got lucky and saved it. And even tonight, I was watching the first period, and he's just, I don't know. It feels like he's flying all over the crease again, like he was when he was struggling. And then he's making the saves, but he's definitely not making it look easy. Like, I don't know. He just doesn't look that comfortable in the net. And I feel like when you're another team and you know you're facing a goalie like Samsonov who's had his struggles this year, it's like you want to fire more pucks on the net because you know that, and then a couple go in, and then we're right back to square one. I hope he shuts the door for the rest of the night tonight and has a good rest of the year, but I just think he looks not comfortable in the net right now.
Just not giving you much confidence that he's going to turn it around. Like, yeah, I get that, right? Your opposition, you're just going to try and pepper him early. It's like, all right, if we get one in the first 10, then maybe we knock him off his game just enough, right? What's up with Wall? When is he back?
Yeah, that's hopefully going to be soon. I think he's practicing now, or just starting to practice, but I think it's been a little bit longer than they thought. That's another wild card. Like, the Leafs have 3 wild cards in net. I mean, you hope you roll the dice and you find one that works, and you probably will. I don't think you're going to go the rest of the season or into playoffs with 3 goalies that may be good or have good nights. But right now, game 1, the playoffs start today. Everyone's healthy. Wall starts, I guess. I don't know. I'm not comfortable having Samsonov start game 1 of a playoff series, but then you've got Wall going in net. Like, I'm not confident with who they would start right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't be confident in any of those guys, but I'm not really sure how you'd kind of go about fixing that. They're in a bit of a tight situation, and you don't want to give up everything to go get a guy who's maybe just a rental, or I don't know how many goalies are even out there that are available that are capable. So it's kind of they're in a tough spot for sure. So we'll see if they can hang on to that playoff spot, because right now, currently, Detroit is tied with them in points with a couple games in hand. Roy, that's your wins there. And then the Islanders are also on their tail, and so are the Penguins. So not to mention the Devils, who need to start stringing some wins together. So it's definitely competitive right now in the East in terms of fighting for those final 2 wildcard spots. So we'll keep an eye on that. One team that's also fighting for a wildcard spot currently that's in the West is the LA Kings, and they made some moves this week. If we're talking Sens, they went out and they hired their ex-coach, DJ Smith. So I thought that was interesting. I mean, he was not out of a job for long, but if they want tips on how to be content with
here we go.
They hired the right
there
guy.
It is.
They hired
Let's
the
keep
right
the
guy.
skid that we're on.
So we'll see. I mean, they're going way down right now. They're lost, I think, 7 of their last 10 right now, and they are just spiraling. Obviously, they were in a position where they were in top 3 in the Pacific for the longest time, but now they're falling out of it, and they're only 2 points up on St. Louis, and then Nashville's right behind them, along with the Kraken. One team I want to talk about as well too, and we'll get into them a little bit later when we talk about the Kuzmenko and Lindholm trade. But it's Calgary. They're not far out from a playoff spot. They're 3 points out, and they're basically, they sell off Lindholm for picks. They sold Zadorov earlier this year, but they're still hanging around. So a little bit later we'll talk about them and potentially what their chances are of making the playoffs this year. Before we get into that, we'll break down a trade that has happened this past week. That was the Sean Monahan trade. So Montreal sends him to Winnipeg for a first-round pick along with a conditional third in 2027. What were your initial thoughts on that trade, Rory?
I couldn't believe that they got a first back for him, especially after they took a first to also take Monahan off the Flames a few years ago. And he's having a good season, but I don't think that that's his standard. And I don't think he's back to the game that he had before surgery. Like, you see him skating around out there, and to me, he doesn't have the same legs under him. He doesn't have real mobility. I don't know. He's on a better Jets team, I guess, and he's going to be great for your depth and on the PK. I don't know if I really see that that's a pretty clear strength for the Jets, though, too. Like, their shorthanded ability to still create threats on offense and even just shutting the door on the back end. That's been the Jets' strength all year. So I don't know. Like, good addition, I guess. But I think the Habs definitely win that trade.
Here's a question for you, Kijo. Where does Winnipeg rank in terms of like best forwards groups? Where would you
Best
have
forward
them?
groups?
Yeah. Like, are they in your
That's like,
top? Are they in your top three even?
I don't think they're in my top three.
Mm-hmm.
They got a lot of guys that can score, and they're one of those teams that if you shut down one line, you got a couple more to deal with. Like going back to the Leafs, like if you shut down those two lines, that's it. You don't have to worry about anything else. But I feel like Winnipeg, they've got good depth and they've got three or four lines even that can put the puck in the net. But with the Monahan trade too, I think it's a weird time for Winnipeg to trade for him because yeah, I know I said it's good to trade for guys early, get them involved with the team chemistry and everything, but I don't think his value would go up anymore. Like if you're trading for him and you're giving around a first round pick, he could go on a complete tear the next few weeks and you're not going to give more than a first round pick. So I just think like maybe wait, see if he slows down a little bit and try to get him for a little bit less. I just think the first round pick is wild, similar to what you were saying, Rory. I can't like a first round pick for Monahan. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it works out for the Jets because they're a Canadian team that I want to see succeed in the playoffs, but it is a bit of a weird one.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
for
100%.
Montreal. Good for Montreal for fleecing them like they did. But like Winnipeg to me is just sneaky good. Like obviously they have the best goalie in the league, or who he's playing
Which
like
is a
it right
huge
now.
part of it for sure.
Oh, that's the guy that can steal games like that come playoff time is huge. Not to mention their D are one of the top six in the league, and they got Josh Morrissey leading the way. So just really strong D, and then now they just add to it their forward group with a guy like Monahan, and like you said, it's not like they have like they have Kyle Connor, who's probably their most skilled player, I'd say, but aside from that, like you're getting a bunch of guys like I guess Shifley's pretty solid, but looking down the lineup, it's just a lot of like really strong NHL players like Ehlers and Nino Niederreiter and Alex Iafallo and Velarde and even guys, well, Monahan that they just bring in and Cole Perfetti, a young guy. So like just like a lot of really good players that I think makes them would be a really sneaky good team come playoffs.
Yeah, on an individual base, like name by name basis, their forward group is great. Like I just think that meshing together is where they struggle a little bit because I saw a stat in the last 7 games, the Jets have been shut out 3 times. So to me, like yeah, maybe offense isn't their strong suit, but they have the ability there. So I think that there's just better value elsewhere to use that first round pick to try and tie that together.
Yeah. So they're currently sitting 3 points back of the division lead. Dallas is in the lead right now, and Winnipeg does have a couple games in hand on Dallas. So we'll see if they can move up the ranks in the next coming weeks before trade deadline, and we'll keep an eye on them to be buyers at the deadline as well too. So in other news as well, for a big trade that has happened, obviously we kind of broke it a little bit last week during our episode, but the Lindholm trade, where it was Calgary sending Elias Lindholm off to Vancouver for Kuzmenko, a first rounder, and a conditional fourth round pick. Both those guys have had hot starts since then, obviously with each of them scoring goals in their initial debut. What do you think of the trade for Vancouver, and where does that put them in terms of like their forward group in the league now, Rory?
Oh, yeah, I love Lindholm on that team. Yeah, we missed it. Like we were talking about it, we saw it was coming, but to actually get the official trade, missed it by like a couple minutes being live. My dad acting as Elliot Friedman texting, but I had my phone on Do Not Disturb, so we just missed it. But yeah, I like Lindholm there a lot, and I think, yeah, if you're the Nucks, I don't think there's much else. I think you see that lineup and you're like, we're pretty content rolling with this into playoffs. Maybe a depth defenseman, but yeah, obviously Kuzmenko wasn't really working out there. Like going from 40 goals to what, like 10? So there's clearly something going on there. So Salamoli still has some value, I guess, and hopefully does turn it around in Calgary. But great, yeah, great trade for Vancouver. Exactly what they needed.
Yeah, that Kuzmenko just I think he doesn't need to worry about defense. Just let him loose, let him do his thing.
He doesn't worry about defense.
No, and maybe he was in a defensive role too much on Vancouver, but just let him loose in Calgary and see if they can get themselves into a playoff spot. What were your thoughts on the trade, Kijo?
Yeah, you love to see those when they work out. I mean, obviously very fresh and new. We don't know 100%, but when both guys score right off the hop, I saw it too. Somebody was roasting when Kuzmenko scored. They were like, "Oh, look at this! Like Vancouver got fleeced in this deal or whatever." And then 2 seconds later, Lindholm gets two, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, that didn't age well." You love seeing when that happens, but no, it's an interesting trade. I love seeing trades that involve guys that are going to be impact players on both teams. It's not one impact player going for draft picks and kind of a prospect. It's two good players. We just want to switch it up a little bit. Think one guy can mesh well with another team, and yeah, it's good to see when two guys get goals in their first games. That's for sure.
I think that it's.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think that's like just the right player that Calgary needs to. Somebody who can just spark that offense and just is a little bit like, okay, he's a little less structured, but they need a little bit more chaos up front. And like obviously Lindholm hurts them, losing him, that hurts a ton, but Connor Zary's been incredible as a rookie for Calgary. So maybe they're giving him confidence in that opportunity to slide up in the depth chart and get more minutes in the center of the ice. So
yeah, and speaking of that spark, I was just gonna ask you, like, does a guy like Kuzmenko coming into Calgary help a guy like Huberdeau out and help just in general their team to spark the offense and possibly get them on a win streak and maybe even push them into a playoff spot because they're only 3 points back right now.
Let's get your take on that, Phelps.
Yeah.
You're always asking us. Give us your take on that one.
I feel like it can't hurt a guy like Huberdeau. I mean, he's been playing so bad basically this entire year, and maybe playing with Lindholm was an anchor for him. And now that he's gone, potentially Kuzmenko stepping in on his line kind of sparks him and sparks Calgary a little bit. It's tough because they'd have to jump teams like St. Louis and Nashville as well as Seattle to get into a playoff spot. But they're certainly in the conversation right now. They're not out of it. They're only 3 points out. And yeah, I think if I wouldn't want to, I'd be a little nervous if I was those teams ahead of them just because if a guy like Kuzmenko comes in, he could get hot and then that kind of pushes them into a playoff spot if all goes well.
What do you think that they do before trade deadline? Because they're one of the more interesting teams, obviously Tanev and Hanifin, their names have been mentioned. What do you think they do with this last month before free agency?
Like, I feel like for them it's going to come right down to trade deadline just because they're going to be patient with it. They're going to wait on these guys to see exactly where they are and how they stack up against the other teams. But if they're still in the conversation, we've seen it before where teams are like near a playoff spot and then they just essentially Edmund decides that they're not gonna be competing anymore for a playoff spot and they'll sell guys off. So I really hope that's not the case for Calgary because I still think they have the makeup of a really good team. They have really solid defense with Hanifin, Tanev, even with Zadorov gone, they still got guys like Weegar and Rasmus Anderson and those guys. And they got Markstrom in net, so they still got a solid goaltender. If they can just kind of learn to mesh together and string together some wins, they could easily become a playoff team, I think, still. Only 3 points back. They're certainly not in a position like the Minnesota Wild, who are at 500 hockey. Like they're just above 500, but they're a little bit closer than the Wild would be. So it's still competitive in the West.
To me, if you're a team who's up near the top in the West and you see Calgary getting that last playoff spot, that's a team that you're nervous to play with. Like you just went over their depth. They have Huberdeau and yeah, he struggled, but in the past years we've seen Jonathan Huberdeau, like and Kadri, those guys can get hot. And if I'm a first place team and I get Calgary coming in, it's it could be a scary matchup. And is it Markstrom? Is he hot? And if he's not, Vladar's there. I think if you're Calgary and you can hold on and keep putting up some competitive games, putting some win streaks together, maybe they could surprise you come playoff time.
Hmm.
Yeah, you heard that Vancouver kind of wanted Tanev in that deal with Lindholm. I wonder if they just try and make hockey like more hockey deals like that. Like,
Hmm.
okay, we'll ship out these players that don't want to be here, but we'll still take any like high end talent in return, less for picks because we still think that we can compete.
Hmm. Like, it's tough to say whether if they're going to make playoffs or not, and it's up to the GM to decide what direction they want to go. Because like I look at teams like Seattle, and they got good depth on forward as well, good D, like solid team. You get Nashville, who's got a really good goalie. They've got decent defense depth. They don't have as many high end forward, or I guess like well known forwards, I guess you could say, as Calgary and Seattle does. But these are the teams that they're going to have to jump, and we'll keep an eye on them to see if they can get themselves into a playoff spot. So that'll be good to see. Hopefully they can, because again, we like to see all the Canadian teams kind of do well and at least have a chance at it. So,
All of them? Do you
well,
mean that? You like to see them all succeed?
I love to see the Leafs make playoffs just to see them choke every year. So it's always
Oh my
fun.
God, they won a round last year. Get out of here.
So, start the parade. Start the parade.
It's already
One round.
started.
That's exactly what Pasternak's saying. They win one round and they think that's the greatest thing ever. Like that needs to be celebrated. So
One round and they won an All-Star game. That
yeah,
was half Leafs,
there
so
we go. Yeah,
I
they
heard
have the
that
home ice
DeBrincat did
advantage.
pretty good on there.
He just had a baby. Did you see that as well? DeBrincat just had his another kid. So
Oh,
congrats to
I
him.
didn't see that.
Yeah, a little cat running around.
oh, breaking news. DeBrincat had a child.
Yeah. So,
Oh, that's
in other
good.
news, Gary Bettman came out. He was obviously spoken to quite a bit this weekend, with it being the All Star weekend. One of the things that he had mentioned, along with, well, Elliot Friedman expanded more into it, was the Arizona Coyotes' time possibly coming to an end. They're just awaiting a sale and then possible relocation, is what I'm guessing. Have you kind of heard any more on that, Roy?
No, not much, but I'd be. Oh, where do you think they'd relocate? It sounds like Houston potentially. We know that Salt Lake was trying to push the NHL to expand, like start another expansion process. And then, folks, you mentioned Atlanta the other week.
Yeah.
So there's lots of options. So
Mm-hmm.
I
I
don't
never
know. I'm just
understand
happy
that.
that this is starting.
Mm-hmm.
With Atlanta, though, it didn't work the first time. What makes them think it's
Yeah,
going to work
I
the
don't get
second
it.
time around?
You may
I
as well try somewhere new. Like you got to go somewhere different.
I don't get why they
Quebec
don't throw
City.
yeah, or a second team in Toronto. Help make prices
The
maybe a
Hammer.
little bit more affordable.
Yeah, Hamilton. Let's get a Hamilton team
Yeah,
going.
Yeah. If we get well, like lots of cities have two teams. It's certainly not, it wouldn't be like the first city ever to do it. Like lots of teams, lots of areas have two teams. So a second team in Toronto, we make Leafs prices really expensive, and we make the Hamilton games a little bit cheaper, or wherever that may be, and then we're all happy here up in Ontario. So that could be awesome, I think. But again, I think like you kind of mentioned, Roy, all those teams, I feel like the NHL wants to expand to first before we explore those options. So I think that's
that's
more
what I was
likely.
wondering. You look at like the map and where all the NHL teams are. It's so congested down here.
Mhm.
Like I think that probably plays a part as well. But
Yeah, yeah.
Hamilton would
So
be awesome.
yeah, and they said that announcement is going to be coming in the next week or two. So we should know soon enough on what the fate of the Arizona Coyotes will be. So we'll keep an eye on that.
5 years too late.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, uh, all right, we can have some fun now. Let's talk about some of the some of the best players in the league. All right, some of the best players of all time, in fact. In terms of Mount Rushmore, so Mount Rushmore, obviously, we know a great landmark there in the States with 4 great American heroes up on there. In terms of the NHL, though, we're talking the best 4 players of all time. Why don't we first talk about the best 4 players of all time, and then we'll each give our top 4 for our best 4 players all time on our own teams.
Well, I think we
Let's
all
do
know
it.
number 1, no questions asked, Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah,
Everyone agree there?
I can agree with that. Absolutely.
Well,
Looking at
I thought you were
those
gonna say
stats.
Brady Kachuk for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but looking at the stats, I mean, they speak for themselves. It's crazy to think that Ovi's coming close, I guess, to that goal record, but the assists are insane, and just seeing all the points he put up. And I would have loved to see back in the day, like Gretzky go to town against another team, put up 8 points. Like it would have been wild to watch Gretzky. But even watching the highlights and stuff, he's far and away the best all time in my mind, and I'm sure you guys agree as well.
hmm hmm Now,
Yeah.
number 2 is where the debate kind of begins. Who would you have it to, Roy?
Doesn't Mario have a better points per game than Gretzky, or am I totally off on that?
I think that's close. He's because he played less than 1,000 games, but he took over games too. Like really got stuff started for the Penguins.
He had back problems and obviously had that bout with cancer there. So I think Lemieux would be a fair number 2. Would be a fair 2, I'd say. What about for number 3? I would say I'd be going with Bobby Orr. I think for number 3, arguably the best defenseman all time. Won cups, won awards, had the points and the stats to back it up. Forget the era that he played in. If you're one of those guys who's like a big era guy and you're trying to say maybe like McDavid or somebody more recent ahead of a guy like that, then no, I'm saying Bobby Orr still. He iconic goal too as well, which I don't know if that factors into the decision, but you throw his face up on an NHL Mount Rushmore, I think that's deserving.
Another guy who didn't get to play enough or didn't get enough games. He was cut short with the knees, but yeah, kind of was probably the most unique defenseman ever, and just his overall style. So yeah, I'm on board with that.
Number 4, I think we'll have some debates too.
This is going to be tough.
I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, this is going to be tough. Rory, why don't you give your suggestion
Oh,
or your opinion?
It's so hard. It's so hard. Like, you're obviously always going to skew more towards recency just because, like, you're familiar with the player and you can actually back it up. Like, if you want to say it's Crosby or it's Gordie Howe, it's like, well, I've never seen Gordie Howe play, so how can I ever, like, okay, he got a lot of points, but he's played the second most games in NHL history too. But then you see Crosby, and it's like, I'd take that guy in a game 7 any day of the week. So it's so hard to pick.
Mm-hmm. If so, let's say Ovechkin, we'll throw his name out there as well. Let's say he breaks Gretzky's all-time goal record. Does that automatically give him a spot as the number 4 on this Mount Rushmore?
No,
That's a tough one. I don't think so.
It's tough, yeah. I mean, like you said, Crosby's still in there. McDavid obviously needs to win a cup before I think we can put him on a Mount Rushmore. Otherwise, he would be in the conversation as well. But yeah, I think for me right now, it's Crosby who would get that final spot over Gordie Howe, Mr. Hockey. But it's a tight one. There's some debate there for sure. Golden goal, Crosby, obviously. So I'd be giving it to him.
All right, folks, why don't you lead us off with the top 4 sends of all time?
Top 4 sends of all time. I've been cooking this one up, and I've been thinking about this one for a while. Number 1, we got Daniel Alfredsson. All right. All-time greatest Sen, without a doubt. Hall of Famer. Only Sen to be in the Hall of Fame currently. He's number 1. From there, we have number 2, Erik Karlsson. All right. Norris Trophy winner. Multiple Norris Trophy winner. Captain of the Sens. Took us on an incredible run in the playoffs. He is, without a doubt, my number 2. Number 3 gets interesting. For this, I'm going to have to say... Oh, it's a tough one. This is where it gets interesting. I'm going to have to say Jason Spezza. Because of... He was incredible. That line with Heatley, Spezza, and Alfredsson. I was tempted to say Heatley there, but I don't think he was there long enough to warrant that. But hey, one of Rocket Richard with Ottawa. Anyways, we're going with Spezza, number 3. Number 4, I'm going to go with Chris Phillips as number 4. Just a long-time Sen. You can tell, obviously, I haven't given anything yet to like Brady Tkachuk. He's not in there yet.
Chris Neal.
Chris Neal, yeah, another guy who could be in there just for his games played. But I'm going with, in order, Alfredsson, Karlsson, then Spezza, then Phillips. Anybody I left out?
Phillips is a left field. Phillips is a bit of a left field one, though, but I respect that pick.
Yeah, it's like we've had some great players. We've had Marian Hossa play for the Sens. We've had Zdeno Chara play for the Sens. Obviously, we've had.
What about Patrick Lalime, or was he not around that long?
He was a long-standing goalie for Ottawa, but no, never.
Not that great.
I wouldn't put. No, he wasn't that great. No, he
okay.
Was not great. I don't even know if he was.
What?
He was not great. No, he was. I don't know if he was ever top 10 in the league, even, to be honest.
I don't know why I remember him as like one of the better Sens goalies in history, but
because of his goalie mask, probably one of the coolest goalie masks of all time. But no, like a guy like Ray Emery was equally effective. So.
Okay, yeah, so not great.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's where I wrap up my top 4 of Mount Rushmore for Sens. All right, let's hear. We'll go Kijo next with his Mount Rushmore for the Leafs.
This is so tough. Like, I thought about this for a while. Like what you said, Rory, it's tough basing these guys in all time if you've never seen them play. But I think the stats can speak for themselves. I'll start at. I'm gonna start at 5. Okay, I'm doing 5. I have to. Number 5. Yeah, number 5. Honorable mention. Borje Salming. Just without a doubt. When you put up the amount of points he did, he had almost 1,300 penalty minutes. Best defenseman, I think, in Leafs history. He's just. You can't leave him out. I think he was an incredible player in his time. Obviously, it was a little while ago, but can't go without mentioning Borje Salming. Number 4, I think this is where it gets interesting. You know what? I'm gonna say it. Number 4 right now is Austin Matthews. The goal totals he's put up in the seasons he's played so far, and just like putting up 60, and I think he's going to continue. Like, he's already got 40. I think we're talking about this in 10 years. Matthews might be up at number 1, but I think the path that he's on to be maybe the greatest Leaf of all time. So I'm having him in there for sure. Hopefully he can get a couple goals for the boys tonight to get them back into it. Number 3, I think, is Daryl Sittler. Anytime I've seen like a Leafs game, whether I'm there or watching it on TV, and they do Sittler comes out, and whether he's handing out a jersey or he's speaking for whatever reason, the crowd goes wild. And you think too, he's played a while ago, but still not too long ago, that everyone still remembers Daryl Sittler and all the good moments he had. Also not afraid to rough it up. I think he had around 800 penalty minutes. Gotta love Daryl Sittler. Number 2 and number 1 are tough. So I did a little bit of research and I was looking at it. It's hard to not put the number 1 all-time scorer at number 1. So there's a good debate. So I have Matt Sundin at number 2. When I grew up watching the Leafs, he was my favorite player all the time. Loved watching Matt Sundin. Saturday night, throw the Leafs on, grab some mini sticks, and we're only playing in the intermission because I want to see what Sundin's doing during the game. So I loved watching Matt Sundin play. It's just tough for him because he didn't play for the Leafs in an era where they were really that good. He had some tough seasons there in Toronto, but I think the fans love Sundin. Like I said, all-time leading scorer. But number 1, this one, I was just reading about this today, Dave Keon. So listen to these stats. So Dave Keon, 15 seasons with the Maple Leafs, 8 All-Star selections, a Calder Trophy, 2 Lady Byng trophies, a Conn Smythe Trophy, 7 top 4 Lady Byng voted seasons, and then with the Leafs, he won 4 Stanley Cups. I think just the Stanley Cups say it all. He had 858 points in 1,062 games. All 5 of these guys I mentioned are obviously up there in the Leafs all time, but I think in that order, that's where I'm going with the top 5.
I respect you putting the guy with cups as number 1. I will say you got your priorities straight in that regard. So if Matthews can win himself a cup, he'll catapult right up to the top of that list, or gets himself up there. But that's pretty impressive for Dave Keon. So good for him.
That's a tough one to follow up. That was a really good breakdown. I can't do that. I'll be a bit quicker. I'll save the fans since there's a little less care for the Wings.
The Wings, Mount Rushmore. Let's hear him.
It has to start with Gordie Howe, 100%. I feel like he got. I don't know why he got Mr. Hockey as his nickname, but I feel like he was like one of the first grades. Like the really like recognizable names, and there's just like a bit of provenance around Gordie Howe, I guess. So just holding like the games record and being right and holding that points record until Gretzky, being Gretzky's idol growing up as well. Like there's just something to Gordie Howe. So I think you got to give him number 1 there. 2, I'm definitely going with Nick Lidstrom. Perfect Human. Some good nicknames for the Wings players. So that's not too bad.
Perfect Human? Is that actually his? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I think he got 7. Was it 7 Norris trophies? And he got 6 of them after the age of 30. Which is crazy.
Just played the game the right way.
He's not this offensive.
No.
You watch him play, he's not offensive at all.
So efficient.
But he's still got a boatload of points.
Mm-hmm.
And even towards the end at 41, you got Ken Holland basically begging for him to come back and sign another 1-year deal. I wish I got to see him a little bit more. I obviously remember him play, but seeing him more in his prime, I don't remember too much of that. So I put Nick Lidstrom at 2.
Trophies. That's incredible.
Yeah. 3, I'll go with Steve Yzerman being the one to kind of bring that team out of the lows that it was in and captaining them to the first cup in I don't even know how many years, but another just real historical figure. Now he's kind of like recognized as doing it again. Like now he's responsible for the same thing, but in a GM's role. So just, I remember the excitement around him coming and taking over as GM. And it was like, I don't know, it was super exciting. So, and 4, I'll go with Pavel Datsyuk just because of the skill that he had. It was just so fun to watch him play and just the creativity that he had on the ice, and not many players were able to bring that to the game. And combining that skill with the defensive responsibility that you had, obviously, with all the Selkies being in that top 3 consideration every year. Just having that defensive awareness while being able to just be so silky in the offensive zone and having those creative moves like that backhand toe drag, flipping it over Niemi, like that classic shootout goal that he had. And just like the highlight reels that you could watch is just endless with that guy. So I got to put him at number 4 just for like a recency thing, just recency play there.
I'd imagine honorable mention would be Henrik Zetterberg, because I was a little surprised when you said Datsuk over Zetterberg. Anybody see that meme with Matthews from the All-Star game too that's floating around now, or the GIF when he does the little look with his
Yeah,
that's
I
the
saw
same
that.
look that I had when you said Datsuk there, Roy, over Zetterberg. But
see that? I did. I did notice that. I don't know. Zetterberg was really good, but
yeah,
there was no flash. Like, he just did everything really well. But Datsuk was just so much more exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Datsuk pick. I'm right there with you. The shootouts with Datsuk or penalty shots, whatever, when Datsuk's coming down on a breakaway, just magic.
I would be so curious to see, like, if he was just this purely offensive player, what kind of points he would have put up. But putting him out there for like defensive zone faceoffs, the PK, and just like the awareness that he had, if you just take that and shift that to offense, like I would love to have seen that too. So just the well-roundedness with the elite skill.
Good picks. So those were the Mount Rushmores for each of our squads. The Sens, the Leafs, and the Wings. Our top 4 all time, I think we decided it was Gretzky, then Mario Lemieux, then Bobby Orr, and then Sidney Crosby cracked the list as our 4th best player of all time, capping off our NHL Mount Rushmore. So
Jaromir Jagr, honorable mention for sure.
yes, yeah, Jagr as well could be up there. So Gordie Howe was also in the talks there. Ovi, McDavid's name was thrown out, so we'll have to revisit after Ovi breaks the goal record, hopefully in a year or two's time. We'll see where that kind of cements him.
So I love how I said we were talking about the Leafs, the all-time scorers, and they were down 2-1 after the first, and I said, hopefully Matthews can get the boys back into it. He's got one on the board now. 3-2 Leafs after 2. Austin Matthews will be the all-time greatest Leaf. It's going to happen.
There we go. You heard it here first. So he's got to win a cup.
The year.
He's got to win a cup by your rankings there. We'll see if he can get that done. He's got it eventually, right? Toronto's got to break the curse eventually. You'd think.
Oh, when they do, that'll be. I don't even want to think about it.
I've always said this. If I ever see the Sens win an actual cup, you will physically see me cry. That's how happy I will be. And I think that a lot of Leafs fans would share those same ideas, because
I cried last year when they won a round. They win a cup. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Who knows what will happen to Toronto either. That'll be bedlam. So, yeah. Anyways, we'll end off there for episode 15 of Between the Dots. Thanks as always for listening. You can listen to us, catch us live every week on YouTube at 8 p.m. And then episodes are also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts afterwards. So, thanks.
I have one final thought here before we end off, Alex. A couple things, actually. First one is we're looking at putting in another hoodie order. I've had a lot of people reach out to me asking me about the hoodies. So if you're interested, I'll make a post. Can see if we can get that going. And number 2 is I want to thank everyone that is listening. We were talking about the views a little while ago when we weren't recording, and people listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I've had a few people reach out to me that I've never talked to before. They're listening. They say they love the podcast, so we appreciate it very much. No matter what platform you're listening on, and hopefully we can keep some good content coming. And I think I speak for all 3 of us when I say we all appreciate it very much.
Very well said. Couldn't agree more. So, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week on Between the